Good morning. A very warm welcome to all of you to this important discussion on resilient sourcing in a fractured world, redesigning global procurement models. I'm Shivendra. I'm Senior Director working with Cargill. Cargill is a global agriculture commodity and a food processing company. Dr. Rakesh set the context, but let me set some context for this panel discussion. Over the last few years, the world of procurement has changed. It has changed much dramatically in last few years than in the last few decades. We have lived through a global pandemic, geopolitical conflicts, trade barriers, inflations, logistic disruptions. What once considered a stable, predictable, and largely cost-driven supply chain, it has become volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In this new reality, the traditional playbook, which is largely about cost-driven supply chain, is no longer enough. Today, organizations are asking very different questions about how to build the resilience. How do you build the resilience while you still manage the cost efficiencies? Resilience has moved away from a good to have to a necessity. For India in particular, this is very relevant. We are talking about the global supply chain. We are talking about China plus one, and India plays an important role. We are talking about India being a Viksit Bharat by 2047. We are talking about the independent, much more independent India as a country, and manufacturing is going to play an important role, and hence the supply chain, and hence the procurement. So the procurement leaders today are expected to wear multiple hats. They are strategists, they are risk managers, they are innovators, and they are business partners all at the same time. You can't choose to be just one. This discussion is not just about theory. There are very real practical questions that people have. Should I localize? Should I diversify? How much resilience should I build? How much cost does it going to incur? And who is going to bear those costs? To explore these questions, we are fortunate to have great outstanding panel of senior procurement leaders who have navigated these challenges firsthand across industry, across the business cycles, and across the decades. Over the next hour, we will hear their perspective, experiences, and their practical insights on how procurement can evolve from a cost function to become a true driver of business advantage, business competitive advantage, and build the resilience. With that, let me welcome our distinguished panelists and begin what I'm sure is going to be very engaging and insightful conversation. So let me start with the first theme. How do we see geopolitics, protectionism, and supply chain fragmentation are reshaping sourcing strategies? Is globalization being redesigned or is it getting reversed? And let me bring this question first to Mr. Rajeev Jain, Executive Vice President, Supply Chain, Maruti Suzuki India Limited, to bring his experience from the automotive industry.
Yeah, good morning. So I think when we see last couple of years or even decade, we find that the nature of disruptions is changing. We have seen the COVID, then we have seen the semiconductor crisis, and recently the geopolitics. So we are finding that the things are changing from predictable, market-driven to volatile, which is unpredictable and which is geopolitical linked. So that is one which is a major shift which is happening today. Second is that the focus is shifting from purely efficiency driven to maybe REA, what we say. REA is resilience, efficiency, and agility. So resilience and agility are now getting added in our way of thinking. So if I divide into, if I see the pattern of procurement, so there are maybe in 4 phases I'm analyzing. First phase is the technology front, where we see that when we are seeing the technology roadmaps for future, at that time we are considering what are the critical components and the critical technologies which are coming, so that needs to be kept in mind. Second is the design per se, where the components maybe need to be standardized so that they can be sourced from other areas or other locations. So that is one technology area. Second is the sourcing part, where if we see now we are trend is toward the tierized sourcing, where maybe a primary low-cost supplier is there and then a secondary resilient supplier is there in case of any issues. Then sourcing is not purely on maybe landed cost basis, but based on the risk-driven value. And then from where to source also is now maybe localization and near-shoring, depending upon the tariffs and the logistics. So that is an parameters which is the trend of the sourcing area. Then third front is the how when we are monitoring the supplies. So that time I think digitalization platforms are coming up. One is that how do we monitor the tier 2, tier 3, their locations, the sanctions, ports, or maybe their depth. And second is that I think the playbook of critical components is also one digital platform where we have some top categories and things are monitored based on the risk and the ease of change. So maybe a matrix which there are risk and ease of change is there. So that is the third point. Fourth is even the teams and the leadership. They are also now need to be changed. Like teams need to be empowered. Agile thinking, maybe immediately air freighting is required or some decision need to be taken. So those type of things are coming. And then second is on the leadership also needs to be evolving. We have to be digitally savvy leaders where the supply chain risks and the geopolitical strategies, everything in one. So such type of leaders are required. So now the things are shifting from like conventional procurement to maybe procurement where we are resilient procurement, and that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Rajeev Jain. Now let me go to Mr. Pawan Gupta, another leader from the automotive industry. He is Chief Procurement Officer, Ashok Leyland. So how do you see, Mr. Pawan, with all the disruptions in the semiconductor, in the rare earth, and how are you managing these disruptions in the automotive industry?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So basically, automotive industry for decades is driven by the principle of working with the full optimization, buying cheap, working lean. But this is now changing as we are moving into a world where geopolitical disruptions, technology, nationalism, and trade barriers are becoming common. We have to see that procurement moves from buying cheap to buying smart. So I think that the procurement in an automotive company, basically three fundamental changes are happening. The first is we move from price negotiation to risk architect. Earlier, the success of a procurement was measured how year on year productions we are getting. But now it is how many disruptions actually I can sail through without affecting my production. So the supply chain is being designed to diversify and optimize between the globalization and localization. So earlier the globalization means you are buying from a cheapest global source for your requirement. Now you have to distribute, you buy globally, but you have to distribute your procurement, and also you have to see which item you can localize so that you don't have a dependence on a supplier or a region over dependence. Also now the supply chain we have to build optionality, whether it's an option of 2 suppliers for an item or alternate materials or bringing modularity with flexible toolings. So inventory normally helps you once, but if you build the optionality, it can help you every time the world changes. Also, you work on, for each platform, multiple sources, 2 sources. somewhere you are not able to do it, then you at least build two plants for the one item. And also these plants also need to be robust enough so that these can survive any natural catastrophes like flood, water safety, or fire safeties. So this is how and also monitoring the financial health of the supplier. This is how the purchasing function is moving from cost optimization to risk architect. The second point I would say is managing the supplier, moving from supplier management to ecosystem management. Earlier, most of the disruption could be from tier 1s. Now we see most of the disruption come from tier 2 and tier 3, whether it could be a chemical factory in one country, or it could be a magnet from a second country, or a semiconductor fab from a third one. So now we have to map tier 1, tier 2, see the total visibility, risk mapping, and work with the tier 1 suppliers, how we do a risk management of their tier 2s. So the procurement is basically moving from who is my supplier to who is my supplier's suppliers. So I like to give an example. Recently, this Inexperia China, where the Chinese government put an export license. So almost 30 suppliers of Ashok Leyland were buying from Inexperia China, but we were able to manage this because we had an alternates. Those parts like MOSFETs, diodes, we had from onsemi and also Rome. So this is how managing your tier 2, tier 3 plays a big role. The third thing I will say that changing your cost focus to overall cost of the ownership. So earlier the concept was buying cheapest component is a success, but it is not so. We have to see in total cost of ownership, including the cost of inventories, freight cost, also what is the cost of compliance and cost of plant shutdowns. It has to be seen in totality. So in summary, I would say that purchasing function is moving earlier from a support function to a strategic center of a company. And the companies who survive are not the biggest or the cheapest one, but those companies which have options, visibility, and a strong partnership. That's all for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pawan. Let's get some different industry perspective. And with this, I would like to go to Mr. Prashant Patel, the global sourcing leader in GE Vernova. And I would like to ask how you see in the energy industry with the renewable energy, solar, power generation, how do you see the impact of this in your industry?
Yeah, thank you and good morning all. A quick introduction about me, I'm Prashant coming from GE Vernova, and it needs 30 seconds to introduce because then it gives you a right perspective, right? So GE Vernova is a global engineering energy organization. We manufacture gas turbines, steam turbine, wind equipment, solar, battery storage solution all across. So if you, just to give a magnitude of it, if you put your mobile to charge, it takes 30 seconds, then 10 seconds is powered by GE machines. So that's the breadth at which we operate in the world. Our sourcing footprints we are sourcing almost from 160, 170 countries of the world. We are located globally in around 20 plus countries. And the buy, what we control is around $20 billion buy. Out of which I come from a gas turbine or a gas power division, which is around $7 billion buy. Now, the global disruption is, I think, Pawan as well as Rajeev ji both has covered very nicely. So I'll not be repeating those things because I think whether it is an automobile or any other industry in the manufacturing domain, it talks more or less same, whether it is a semiconductor, whether it is a raw material disruption, effect of a China on the global map, it is all same. What differently we are doing at GE is we are not working with a supplier as a supplier. It's more of a partner. Now, what does that word means to us as a partner is we work hand in hand to solve their problem. So our biggest challenge today is, thanks to AI, we are seeing an upsurge of a demand into the market as a 3x from 2025 to when we go to 2030 is what we are doing a forward-looking plan. Our demand growth is 3x. Now, do we or are we able to meet those demand? Is our supplier capable enough to meet those demand? So that's where the partnership comes into the play. So we work hand in hand with all our supplier partner. We solve their challenges, whether it is in terms of safety, quality, delivery, and cost. We don't measure any of our supplier performance just on the cost. We don't measure ourselves as a cost player. We start with the safety, we go to the quality. It has to be a right quality part produced at a supplier end. If the part, and this is what we very proudly use as a term, if a part, when it is a defective, it costs $1 at a supplier place. When it goes to the site, it costs millions of dollars, right? Similarly, a part which is required for an outage, imagine like today, there is a power plant in Delhi and it goes shut down. We all will be out of this, right? So our response to the end customer needs to be quick enough. It has to be a resilient. The system has to be built to cater to those requirements. If there is a disruption somewhere in raw material manufacturer in some part of the world, how quickly we can fix it together with the partner, with the supplier partner, whether it is a tier 2, tier 3, and we use all the terms available in the world, whether is it a digital twin, whether it is a forward-looking forecasting, whether it is, you call it the things which is available in the world, we are deploying it to make sure that our parts are made available on time. We talk of 100% OTD, on-time delivery. We are not there, nobody is there, but we always try and achieve it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. Now let me go to Mr. Venkatesh Srinivasan. He is Director, Global Supply Chain Strategy and Excellence, Avery Dennison. And as far as I understand, Avery Dennison, you provide a lot of supply chain efficiency to the industry, sustainability and other things. So how do you see from your perspective?
Thank you, Shivendra. So let me first talk about what Avery Dennison does. I'll take maybe a minute on this. So Avery Dennison influences our lives daily while we do not see. 11 years back, I had not heard of this organization because it is in a B2B space. So when someone contacted me and asked me, would you like to come and work for us? I had not heard of this. But then I got to understand how it influences our lives. So Avery Dennison is a leader in material science. We make labels. That's one of our labels and packaging materials. That's primarily the largest business that we operate in. So in the morning, if you were to wake up and when you take a bath, the bottle of shampoo that you may use, the base material of that would most probably have been manufactured by Avery Dennison, global leader. If you go to bed and if you have a sweet tooth and like to have a dessert before going to bed, the label on the ice cream tub would be ours. Our material goes from space technology to the deep freezer to heaters and boilers everywhere. I currently am working with the new age business, which is the RFID business of Avery Dennison, again a leader in its space. Having said that context, now let me see how we have managed or looked at procurement and managing disruptions. So the one thing that has been seen and is quite clear over the last few years is that you cannot predict disruptions. But disruptions are something that are happening thick and fast. The number of disruptions are much more. The categories of disruptions are very different. Some of these may be called seasonal. For example, some things that Dr. Singh alluded to, the seasonal droughts in Panama Canal, typhoons off the coast of Japan. Now these are seasonal in nature. You know that there is a disruption that is coming, you can plan for that. There are disruptions which are completely unpredictable, unforeseen. The biggest one of them all was COVID, as it happened a few years back, but it did teach us a few lessons. Now in the other spaces which are global in context, policy decisions that are being made by the US government, for example. Believe me, the entire last year of 2025, we were just busy managing what Mr. Trump was about to say or had said in the last few weeks and multiple scenarios. So having said that, how do we manage that? So the first thing that we see is categorize your risks and your categories. Classify them. Not every category that you operate in or use needs redundancy. So you need to know which is critical for your operations, which is not. And that's something that we have consciously done. The second is China plus one for us is not just a slogan. It is capability building from within. And that's something that has been consciously done. One of our, in my current business that we operate in, China is the de facto largest supplier of materials when it comes to the base materials for RFIDs. But we consciously had started building, not predicting that Mr. Trump would come and make announcements of 50% plus tariffs, but we had constantly evolved at looking at China plus one as a capability building measure, and we built some capability manufacturing structures. In fact, the largest of the RFID manufacturing plant in Mexico. That gave us a head start over competition, and capability hence was diversified. The third that we talk about, and I think a few of the other panelists had also alluded to, is cross-functional decision making. So when we have a decision to be made on how to manage a disruption, it's not just the procurement or the supply chain function that is on the table when the decisions are being made. This is where the business leader, the general managers, the CEOs are also part. The commercial functions are also there. The operations functions are also there. Sitting across the table, when there is transparency, when there is discussion that is happening, better decision making happens. And the last is deliberate trade-offs. I am ready to pay a premium in cost for assurance of business continuity, assurance on compliance, assurance in terms of speed of response from our supplier. So it's not just about cost. I think now in the new age, when we talk about the KPIs of the Chief Procurement Officer or the procurement department into 2030, it is not just going to be DPO as one of those most important things. It's about business continuity. Can you contribute to the business in other elements? One of those was risk management that the earlier panelist had spoken about. And last but not least, I think this is how do you build for the future? In my mind, this is something that we were just discussing. In fact, one of my colleagues here is that should you invest in best in class, put in all the cost into one, or should you invest in fit for purpose? And that's something that we have consciously done. Not everywhere do you need the best in class operations. You may need fit for purpose elements. And these are the strategies that we have tried to deploy. Have we succeeded in all? Probably not, but we are learning and we are evolving as we go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. This is Yogesh Mahajan from SAEL. Just brief about my company. Like SAEL is a renewable company. Like basically we are the IPP, and we have solar as well as biomass thermal. So basically, like currently we have almost 6,000 megawatt of portfolio, partially operating, and around 3,000 is under commissioning and erection. So like in renewable, like we are trying to control the pollution in Delhi. Like AQI at present in Delhi is around 400, 500. So like we have around 12 biomass thermal plant in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, where we are burning almost 2 million ton of biomass like parali, wheat straw, rice husk. So that kind of things we are doing. But these 12 plants are not sufficient to control the pollution. We require at least 200 plants. Now come to the topic. Like this global disruption, that doesn't mean that we are reversing the globalization. Basically, we are redesigning. And the strategies like China plus one and friend shore and like near shore, these strategies doesn't mean that we are exiting from China supply chain. China is a big hub for the manufacturing. We cannot ignore. But like a lot of companies now focusing on setting up the manufacturing in like India, Southeast Asia, Mexico, like Eastern Europe. So like that is now very important. Like many companies have taken the step to set up something to alternate of the China. So like in our case, like we are also going for a backward integration. Like we are making solar modules. We have like right now we have 2 factories in India. So like for the solar module, like the raw material dependency is entirely on China. So now we are like shifting that dependency to like India, like Southeast Asia and other countries. And also we are setting up like plant for the cell manufacturing in India. So that kind of strategy is now working. A lot of companies are working on these strategies to to secure the supply chain. So that's quite important. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think great insights on how these geopolitics, supply chain fragmentation, protectionism is changing and influencing our sourcing strategy. And some of the things that I put down is you really need to be innovative. So there is not a one solution. People talk about multiple plants. It can be about dual sourcing. It may be about deeper supplier partnership and treating just supplier to more like a partner. I also hear that you really need to prioritize the playbook of critical components. Mr. Rajeev, so it's not like all components fall under the same category. You really need to prioritize where you want to focus and the cross collaboration, because these decisions are not only taken by the procurement, and somebody mentioned that you really need to have the business leaders, the finance, so that when you need to decide that I'm willing to pay premium, like Mr. Prashant, Mr. Venkatesh Srinivasan said that I'm willing to pay the premium. I think you need to have those cross-functional collaboration and alignment to make sure these things happen. Okay, let's move to the another topic. So we heard we spoke about how this is shaping sourcing strategies, and we also started touching from cost optimization to the risk adjusted value and how procurement is shifting here. And now let me bring this question to a different industry, to the food industry, to Mr. Rahul Poddar, Head of Procurement South Asia region from Nestle. How in the food industry you see the procurement role is bringing the risk-adjusted value?
Thanks a lot, and really an honor to be in a company of such an enlightened panel. And thanks for setting the context that I would now talk about it in a very different perspective, because till now my peers are more from manufacturing and engineering. When you talk about food industry, you are basically dealing with agri-commodities, right? Which are like grown under the sun and then value-added, processed and become part of our plate. Here, typically, despite all the conundrum and the turbulence which we are witnessing in the global trade scenario, the flows more or less remain constant. So if you talk about any food, it would be primarily made out of a grain, oil, salt, sugar, spices, right? These are 4-5 things which put together create any food product you're talking about. And when you talk about oil, over the decades, certain geographies have gained those competitive advantage which you can't undo, because unlike a manufacturing factory, you can make one out of China into Mexico, but to make one more palm oil country other than Southeast Asia will take decades, because it is, shifting the entire land usage pattern, shifting the demography of people. So here what I feel is that despite all the loud noise which the political leadership does, they really cannot affect how the food flows, because every government, whether it is democratic or autocratic, has to feed people. And this is where, coming to the context which we are setting here, that risk-adjusted value, right? Now here, like, till now, our focus was more on, I'll take an example of palm oil. The focus was more on dealing with onshore and local refiners who bring in oil from Malaysia, Indonesia to India, processing it in our shores and bringing it here. Now we see that the risk-adjusted value is much better off in dealing with origin-based refiners, because there are certain kinds of changes in which you can deal with your import duties. Given that government has a huge incentive towards export promotion, they create a lot of cryptocurrency in form of credits, and those credits can be used to set off the import duties. And hence, you can create value in terms of not only cost, but in terms of quality, and most importantly, in terms of sustainability. If you shift from a onshore vendor, a local vendor who is not having so much control on the origin, to dealing with an origin vendor, right? So maybe in agri-industry, sometimes it makes sense to move far away from where you are to rather than localizing. But again, why I bring this thing, often in a commonsensical word, you would say that going far off is increasing risk, but the risk-adjusted value shows a better rate of return and a sustainable return if you were to do this. So these are like kind of contra examples to which you would typically see from an engineering industry. Let me also take one more dimension to bring in a geopolitical risk. Now, when you look at India, and I'm speaking more from an India context because my work has been here, you see certain trade channels which come into India are stable, and certain often get very quickly disrupted. Typically, it's the Europe to India connection which really gets disrupted because of no fault of Europe or India, because something keeps happening in Middle East, right? So even if you have good vendors or good high quality products available out of European origins, you might want to look at different origins, right? And so a Turkey, which may not be that good political friend of India, but the vendor base of Turkey is much more lucrative and sustainable for India from the trade flow point of view, right? And then again, East Europe looks much better, and of course, Southeast Asia is there. So these are also places where, again, from a risk-adjusted point of view, while the risk might be minimal in terms of importing from European vendors, but at a risk-adjusted manner, specifically in view of disruption of supply chains. Because I don't remember, one of the gentlemen here was saying, the antidote to any crisis is airlifting. I think today's world, no matter any amount of planning you do, when you get into a crisis, the airline industry benefits, and you are bringing in, probably I think in these days, the commercial world is doing more airlifting than the military world to solve their crisis. So, and that really hits your P&L. In one whap, it takes away your 6 months of all the value-added work which you would have done. So with this insight, I'll take a pause.
Thank you very much, and bringing a very different perspective. Origination, plantation, taking 10 to 15 years to build. It's not as fast sometimes we see, say, in the other industry wherein you can shift the sources faster. Let me go to bring this question to Mr. Sandeep Bhargav, Group Chief Procurement Officer, Havells India. We are talking about resilience. We are talking about moving from cost optimization to more risk-adjusted value, and you are in the consumer goods space. So who pays for it? How do you manage the pressure of margin, building the resilience, but say maybe compromising on some cost optimization?
Good morning, everybody. Everybody said so much, and basically it's the same thing. We're all purchasing, we're all speaking the same language. So I'll stick to fundamentals, okay? I'll speak about back in the 90s when I started work, we used to work, we used to work on fundamentals, demand supply, uh, used to be the basis of our procurement planning. And since I was in the automotive industry, I'm one of the few who've been blessed to be working in the automotive industry. I've done some work in steel in Europe, came back to India and worked with aluminum, cables and wires, now FMCG. So I bring in a little bit more perspective here. So back in the automotive industry, we were working on the cost optimization, cost efficiency by way of lean, by way of Kanban, JIT. Then came in 2008, the Lehman Brothers. Okay, so there we introduced risk aversion, risk mitigation. All our planning went into, looking into risk aversion, risk mitigation. Then came in COVID. Okay, so we had to upgrade ourselves, all of us. We had to look at resilience. These words I gathered from Dr. Singh's when he was resilience. We had to be adaptive, self-reliant, and we had to look at, we used to actually rate our vendors on QCD back in the 90s. During COVID, it became QCD, DME. Okay, we had to look at look at our suppliers, management, engineering skills. Then came in Mr. Trump. Okay. Actually, Mr. Trump has actually increased our blood pressure, all of us. Okay. We're looking at going back to basics, diversifying, looking at alternatives. Nearshoring means localization. We went global. Back early 2000, we went global. Quality improvements, now we're going back to local. Looking at buffer stocks. We went from lean, we're going back to buffer stocks. And essentially from cost optimization and cost efficiencies, we're looking at ownership, the total cost of ownership. So today, the managements are not looking at COGS, they are looking at risk-adjusted procurement. So there's a huge loss if there is a shortage, if there is a line stoppage, if there is a disruption in the supply chain. So I think in the FMCG, the customer never pays. We were selling an air conditioner for 32,000 rupees 10 years back. We're still selling it for 32,000 rupees. So it's either us or the supplier who pays. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now talk about how the specifications of air conditioners have changed in last 10, 12 years, right? But but yes, I share similar background. I started my career in automotive for first 7 years before moving to management consulting or the food industry, so I can relate very much about Kanban, JET in early 2000. Okay, great. Now, let me go to Mr. Shyam Sundar Sharma, Vice President Supply Chain, Maxop Engineering Company Limited. We speak about risk-adjusted value. You heard about from the OEMs, right, that they are looking for resilience. How you, as a supplier to the OEMs or in this industry, how do you see the balancing, the both sides, the cost and the resilience?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Shyam Sundar Sharma. So I think I am working in Maxop Engineering. I don't think so many of the people have heard about Maxop, but my OEM colleague knows about Maxop Engineering. So mostly I have worked in automotive industry, so I will only focus on the automotive industry challenges, because my colleagues from Maruti, Honda and Ashok Leyland are sitting here. So they are the people who are putting a lot of challenges towards us. So Maxop Engineering is the, the Fairfax Group company who is into the automotive industry, and predominantly we are manufacturing automotive parts, especially in aluminum high pressure die casting, then LPDC we are switching in, and then gravity and other technologies. So basically, we have seen a lot of disruption in the past 10, 20, 30 years in the automotive industries. And the OEMs who have taught us a lot, especially Maruti and Honda and Hero, who have, teachers us, who have taught us regarding the volume business and the forecasting and the other models. So automotive industry is, is playing a pivotal role in the Indian economy, and automotive industry is growing almost by 9 to 10%, if I'm not wrong, year-on-year basis. So the automotive component industry is largely, contributing in the economy, and the size of the automotive industry is almost 80 billion US dollar as far as financial year 25 is concerned. So they are the, automotive, they are the largest player in the economy. So as far as risks are concerned, there are a lot of risks and there are a lot of challenges in the automotive industry, and we are passing through, whether it is the, we talk about the COVID situation, then we came across the semiconductor availability challenges, then there are a lot of volatility into the raw material side also. So now Government of India is focusing to develop the is focusing and pushing us for the localization of the raw material. A lot of raw material has been localized in the past few years, and the industry is really doing well. BIS has been implemented, so we are focusing from globalization to the localization. And earlier we cost centric. Now we are talking about the risk mitigation kind of situation. So we are evolving, and day by day we are evolving, and we are developing the supplier base in such a way that there should not be any threat for the supply side, so that we can feed the customer lines in time. So right time of the material at the best quality and the reasonable price. At the end of the day, supplier has to survive, so we have to think through the tier 2 and tier 1. Especially there are a lot of process on tier 2 and tier 1s, so OEM has to think through. And ultimately the market is cost conscious, so we have to also take care of the total cost of ownership. So my colleagues have already talked about the different ideas, different kind of approaches for cost and risk mitigation. So in the end, I will say that this journey will continue. We will face a lot of challenges in the coming days, but I'm sure that the companies like Hero, Honda or Maruti will really guide us and will help us to sail through such kind of situation. Thank you very much.
Now let me go to Mr. Manuj Malhotra, Vice President, Strategic Sourcing and Supply Chain, Omega Seiki Mobility. I guess you would be able to bring a lot of things around the rare earth or maybe the EV vehicles and those aspects from your industry, how these geopolitics as well as this risk-adjusted value is influencing in your industry.
Yeah, thanks Shivendra, and good morning all. So wonderful to be here among us, the co-panelists and the great audience. So just a quick brief about me. I'm predominantly from the automotive segment. So I started with Mahindra, TVS, Philips, and Hero MotoCorp, my last organization. So now I'm heading supply chain at Omega Seiki Mobility. So basically we are building a brand, and within a short stint of close to 6 years, so we have predominantly reached to the 4th position approximately into the Vahan portal in terms of L5 manufacturers. So having said this, so I think this is something quite an important subject, and I think very great deliberations has already taken place. And this being a very, the topic which is close to my heart, so I keep on largely advocating. There are a couple of points which I will seem to be, repeating in terms of what has been said. So first of all, like Shivendra, I said that I carry a mixed blend of, since I have worked for 23 years in internal combustion engine and for last 2 years into the EV space. So it's a mixed blend of that, but one thing remains constant is the kind of philosophy which runs into both. So there is no demarcation if I see whether it's a EV space. Yes, like you quoted about certain scarcity or certain disruptions. So I would largely say that a little bit I'm going back before I come to this point, where I think 5-6 years back, when there is a COVID pandemic which hit us badly, we suddenly wake up in the morning and found ourselves, surrounded with all the crises when the whole world was shutting down, all supplier base, there was hue and cry all around. We found ourselves in the midst of crisis when everything was, shutting down, and it has to be started from the scratch. So I would say that whether it is a kind of trade tensions, whether it is a tariff war, whether it's a geopolitical tension, like most of us quoted right now with the starting message from Dr. Rakesh, that one thing is for sure is that these disruptions are not going to end. It started with the pandemic, who taught us a lot of lessons. I personally take it, during that point of time, I was with Hero MotoCorp. So how we utilize it as an opportunity rather than as a challenge, so that is one part of this. So I would say that this subject has to be dealt not with respect to the demarcation of the boundaries of the industries, yes, but it carries the kind of messages that there has to be a kind of the mandate of dealing with the disruptions on day-in-day basis, not as an optional subjects. So gone are the days when we are talking about, yes, okay, fine, there is a COVID pandemic, or we are hit by some crisis. There are a kind of geopolitical tensions, like somebody said about Trump. So Trump is increasing the blood pressure for all these supply chain guys. But the point is, now there has to be a dealt with respect to the business continuity process. When I say business continuity process, so we have to follow certain basic hygienes and fundamentals, which I keep on advocating to the large. So and again I'm emphasizing these are the points which has already been covered. So we have predominantly seen the advantages of the suppliers not being treated as a vendor. First of all, they are the partners in your progress. We have to see that they are dealt in terms of their hand holdings. First of all, we understood that the first thing which pandemic or the disruption taught us is in terms of dealing your supplier base. So extending not only to the tier 1 level, that going beyond the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So I personally, I would say that largely got benefited when we adopted that philosophies, because gone are the days when we were saying, okay, fine, I have given this kind of schedules or the kind of, the requirements, supplier has not done that. So not gone are the days, we can't deal with the subject like this. So we have to extend our arms. We have to have a hand holding with the supplier base, because they are not only a commercial partner, they are the strategic partners to you. We need to understand. So this is a first and foremost the rock solid foundation
India
which
is
we
evolving
worked upon, and we derived the immense benefit out of this in terms of the disruptions. Because it is not only the one disruption or two disruptions. There are enough examples around us. There is a price conflict, there is a trade wars. Every time we are finding ourselves in one or another way. So there has to be a certain mandate of dealing that and being in a supply chain, like somebody said. And I would say that thanks to COVID, which brought this function on the forefront rather than the back end, now CPOs, which is the Chief Procurement Officer, they are occupying the boardrooms. So that is what is another aspect which has been derived from this one. So I don't see now in silos workings. It has to be in a complete synchronization and collaboration of the stakeholders. When we say stakeholders, it is extending up to dealers, and suppliers. Suppliers, when we say it is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 level. And not only this, we are extending our arms. We are making sure the manufacturing plants, like there are all OEMs who have their pan-India basis, the kind of presence. So the synchronization of and the discipline of the stakeholders with respect to the external and internal is very, very, very important. It's very important, because this will provide an impetus to the supply chain efficiency, what we are talking, and making more better in terms of dealing with the disruptions. See, disruptions will be a part of life. It will come in all the way. So like said, that hand holding for that, and another important aspect is the silos working. We have seen that not only the inefficiencies surfacing on the top. Yep. So even whether it's a disrupted world or it is a non-disrupted world, whether there are the price conflicts, trade wars, tariff wars, or the geopolitical tensions. So one and only the foremost things which will remain there is that the kind of the integration of the stakeholders. We need to adopt that discipline. We need to adopt that particular, the approach of coordinations. And we have derived the benefits when it's an integrated part. Like somebody talked about the kind of efficiencies. See, when we talk about supply chain, we are talking more about in terms of timelines, consistency, visibility, cost optimization, and the efficiencies. These are the 5 fundamentals, but not, of course, limited to this aspect. So, having said that, so I feel that it is more of a kind of bridge and link model. Bridge and link, when I say that, we need to see as more of a rewarding, full of opportunities, and we all of us know that there has been a kind of the drive which government of India has already put in. We are talking about Make in India. We're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. See, all these are carrying the same message. They are all making us more efficient or more aware, sensitized to look for more the self-reliance.
Absolutely.
We are more talking about the diversified. We are reducing reliance on the single source. We are talking about the diversification. We are more talking in terms of import substitution. The only thing is that we are not being sensitized. And thanks to all this platform where we all are collaborating, we are discussing, we are making the subject more sensitizable. And we feel the need for this. Of course, there are the cost advantages, like you said, whether it's a EV or that space. When we talk about EV space, nothing much will change. Of course, there are the compliance parts. When we talk about ICE, it has gone its own version. Like I said that I carry a mixed blend out of my 25 years. So now I have seen more compliance sort of things which play into this. But the shortages and all the things will remain same. There's nothing more which will go into the change. So having said this, I would say that there is a paradigm shift which is not taking place for particularly supply chain fraternity from the back-end function to the forefront function. And we are seeing the immense potential, how to deal with that. So that is how is my viewpoint. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Disruptions are not over, and risk-adjusted value is not simply increase the cost in the supply chain, and people would agree to that. It's much more complex, and it brings the increased capability for the procurement. And that brings me to the next topic about how do we redesign global procurement operating models? What decisions must stay global? Where do we bring the decisions to the local level? And here I would like to ask question to Mr. Sanjeev Jain, Director Purchase, Honda Motorcycle and Scooters India Private Limited. You being a global organization, how are you bringing these shifts in the operating model?
First of all, thank you very much for the question. As I belong to automotive world, so would like to give some insight how automotive world is rising in India. So if you see, we are almost $250 billion what we can say category we serve to our customer. And if we talk about two-wheeler, if we remove EV, which is a dominance in China, we are number 1 in the world in ICE vehicle. And including EV also, we are the 2nd largest. In passenger car, we are the 4th largest, and LCV, we are the 3rd largest. Overall, if we see the automotive industry, we are the 3rd largest in the world. So you can see how much potential this industry is having in our country, and it is growing every day. Now the question comes, why this question arises. We talk about disruption, we talk about supply chain matter. If you go, before some time in the past, the technology which was using in automobile was a very nascent kind of technology we used to have, where the kind of requirement of these, the raw material or minerals were not there. And after the COVID, when this technology people start using or people aware about the technology, this what happened, there is a complete paradigm shift happen in automobile. We heard after the COVID many things about EV, we talk about flex fuel, we talk about hybrid vehicle. And also apart from this technology, we also increase usage of HMI, which is human machine interface. Today we talk to machine. When we use the automobile, we use a scooter, motorcycle. We are basically, it's a kind of interface between human and machine. Lot of connectivity, lot of software we use. And to run this kind of technology, definitely you need a lot of components, mineral, metal, which unfortunately, as of now, in our country, we have not explored. I will say explode because today, if you talk about these kind of minerals or metals, we only, in my opinion, we explored only 40% of the total potential what our company has, what our country has. So to overcome this disruption, maybe for a certain period, we have to depend on the other part of the world. Till the time we also become self-reliant in these minerals and metals. So now there are two aspects, how to deal with that situation till the time we become self-reliant. Of course, in current situation, if you see, self-reliance in last 10 years is widely accepted in our country, and people are investing a lot of money for becoming self-reliance, including a lot of incentive and promotion. Government is also coming up with these kind of facilities which they are providing. So till that time we become self-reliant, how to deal with this situation? We as Honda, what we do, like today morning also you have listened to Dr. Rakesh, the best thing what we can do in today's situation is the proactive planning, the long-term planning. Because first of all, we should know what is our supply chain. What is happening in current situation, sometimes we don't know. What is the supply chain? If something is happening in Russia, how do we know it is going to affect us? If there is a shortage, if there is a war situation going in Russia, so we should know how it is going to affect our supply chain. What kind of minerals being produced in Russia or in South Africa or in Chile. Unless until we know this complete mapping, complete situation up to where it will go, either tier 4, 5, 6, 7. First, we should map this complete ecosystem for any part which we use in our vehicle, which is presently we are doing. We have started doing. We have to make our team more, intelligent in this situation. They should know if this part is getting shortage, why it is happening. Second thing is we should know, after mapping down the complete supply chain, we should understand where we are depending on the single source. For example, today, my colleague just explained about Nexperia. After we come to know Nexperia issue, then also we understood, these kind of discrete component, our tier 1 supplier, totally dependent, was never a problem. So everybody was saying, it's a hardly 2-3 cent or 5 cent component, but which stopped the complete industry not only in India, everywhere. So if we know this situation that our tier 1 supplier is depending on single source, we would have made an arrangement in the past to handle this situation. Today everybody is taking action. Everybody is developing the second source, but that will take time. For any electronic component approval, you need minimum 3 to 4 months for getting it approved. Until that time you are not getting the approval, you can understand how much pain you are going through. Either you buy a component by some distributor or trader by paying premium price. That 3-4 cent you are going to pay $2 to $3. And people making money out of this. This is what is a parallel ecosystem is getting, coming up in outside the world. So you first know how much single source dependency you are there, so you can have a multi-source activity in advance before this problem came. Third thing is, after knowing your supply chain, making a multi-sourcing, what we can say, approvals, you should be able to take a decision. The decision should be very quick in case of any problem. When you know this kind of disruption are going to come, what decision you have to take, you have to be decisive before this problem come. So your decision-making system should be very quick across the management. It should not happen there is some problem and nobody is discussing those problems, and when the last moment this problem become a big problem for you, then only you would started taking the decision. That will save your time and cost as well. Now we come to the self-reliance. Self-reliance is only possible when you start investing in R&D. Research and development today also, if we talk about investment on research and development, our country still is very low. It's, I think, hardly 0.5, 0.6% of the total GDP. Whereas the other developed nations are spending a lot of money on research and development. So in that direction also, a lot of activity are being done, but it is the responsibility of all of us to bring those investment on R&D. Unless until we make ourselves more innovate, we will not be doing innovation. This problem can never be resolved. So wherever government is giving incentives in terms of PLI or in terms of any benefit, we should utilize in real sense and innovate. Another thing is talent. What is happening that, for handling these kind of technology or taking, developing these technologies, we have to have a talent. What is happening, for example, if we take our country example, people still in our engineering college, we normally teach very general engineering. We are not talking about specific technology which is going to be used in real world. Whereas in other countries it is happening. People are being, giving education on semiconductor, on rare earth minerals, metals. So this also we have to make from the grassroots level. We should give this kind of education to our engineers. So when they come out from the institution, they should work on these technologies specifically and work in that direction. And because the thing is, the best part is we, such a large country, our economy is a consumption-based economy. We have a lot of resource, we have the volumes. Only thing is we have to consolidate. This is another issue. What is happening? We are creating a pockets. For example, all OEM developing their own source. We are not talking about the consolidation. We should talk about the consolidation so cost can be reduced and those investment can be justified. So I feel these kind of activities, if we do, I'm sure we can be a nation where this kind of disruption is not going to affect us. And the last, what just remind me, you see why China today, China is, everybody talk about China. China, last 20, 30 years, they have done a lot of activity in refining the metals. Although it is not necessary all the metal available in China, but they develop the ecosystem for refining those minerals. They also buy, suppose for example, copper from Chile. They also buy rhodium from Russia, palladium from Russia. But they have a capability of refining those. That ecosystem also not available in India. So we have to spend a lot of investment we should do, refining of those metal. In that case, we can be self-reliant. So I think these are the few measures. If we talk, I'm sure this disruption issue, we can handle it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think if people listen to you carefully, they can write down a playbook, how to manage these disruptions, very well said in a brief way. So far we talked about, all those automotive industry, big casting, big components, rare earth, EVs. But we as a procurement also manage lot of tail spend, right? So our plants need to run, we need to have all those components to be supplied to our plants or the different components wherein or supplies wherein we want to bring in the aggregators. And I think this is where I would like to invite Mr. Ashutosh Thar, Chief Business Officer, Procurement, how you as an aggregator bringing the ecosystem and bringing the resilience in the supply chain.
Thank you, Mr. Ojha. Morning, everyone. I think the panelists have talked about pretty much everything that any procurement person would be worried about. So thank you so much for giving those insights. I think what Mr. Jain mentioned in the end is a good segue for me to talk about aggregation. Procmart's logo and vision is to keep machines running. So that's the criticality that we cater to. While I know Rahul talked about how he gets palm oil from Indonesia and Malaysia, and how global sourcing helps. In some cases, people talked about how local sourcing helps. I'm just taking it to a different dimension of how aggregation helps, because that is something that could be a disruptor, at least in your tail spend consolidation. Procmart does tail spend consolidation for your indirect spends. And that is where a lot of talk about research and development of finding the right supplier, finding the right source where to get it from. That is something, if you aggregate the materials or the tail spend materials, it helps, because some of the aggregation is basically designed on finding these new sources so that the core manufacturing and engineering companies do not need to get into that. And supplier development at scale can be done by somebody whose core is in manufacturing. So that is something that is definitely a value add that everybody as a parameter should consider. Because when we are talking about a risk-adjusted landed cost, it should also look at how that sourcing is happening. I mean, we are talking about tier 1, we are talking about how tier 2 risk mitigation can happen, how tier 3 risk mitigation can happen. One of the areas to look at for, I think, for everybody, and I'm not saying that people are not doing it, people are getting into aggregation. Now they are understanding the value there. I think Mr. Jain also talked about how can consolidation help. Rather than everybody developing their own supplier ecosystem, if the OEMs or if the automotive suppliers to these OEMs, rather than doing their individual supplier development, they do it with aggregators. It could change the game. It could lower the cost. It could bring more resilience to the overall supply chain as well. So those are some of the parting thoughts. I'm seeing time's up. I'm seeing the team moving here and there. So that is something that I would leave you with as a topic. We have a booth outside, so we can obviously discuss more and how we can add value to the overall procurement process, especially for your tail spends that we are talking about. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we are on top of our time is up. So we heard from all the panelists, different perspective, different industry. We don't have time for audience questions, but feel free to connect with the distinguished panelist members and ask questions related to your industry or in your context. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your great insights in this forum. Thank you.